So we're looking at the performance or development pyramid and how it links to mass participation and sporting excellence. Some texts and sources call this the performance pyramids, some call it the sports development pyramid, but it's the same thing. 4 layers showing progression up from a basic level to an elite level. So the specification here shows that you need to be able to explain this sports development pyramid and how it links, as I said, between mass participation and sporting excellence. Just to remind you, mass participation is about getting as many people doing some form of activity as possible. And at the other end of the spectrum, we have sporting excellence. So this is the few people who have very high levels of ability, who are going to be our international elite and represent the country. And as we move from left to right here, we increase the level of skill that's required, we increase the level of commitment that's required from performers, and also the level of organisation and structure that's required. So who can do these things? Mass participation. Basically, it should be an inclusive thing, as in anybody should be able to take part in any form of sport or activity that they wish to. So it should have a broad base with lots of people taking part because they enjoy it, because it's fun. So everybody should have this opportunity because they have access to facilities or clubs or activities or sessions, and they have the confidence to do so. So opportunity, provision and esteem are all in place. And really the benefit comes to themselves. They become healthier and potentially happier. But also the government actually has some benefit in that our nation would be filled with people who are physically healthy, who might take less time off work, and who might ultimately cost us less money in terms of the NHS bill, as we're living longer and we're potentially running the risk of becoming ill. Sporting excellence then, on the contrary, is more exclusive, so it only really relates to the elite few based on the selection of their ability, and it's all about standard and willing and competition here, as opposed to just taking part and having fun over a mass participation. How does this happen? Well, there's certainly a strong need for financial support as well as sports science support. So we'd have maybe physiologists or biomechanists working with our elite performers. And the benefit comes obviously not only to those who win the gold medals and feel great about themselves and at the top of their sport, but also to the nation, because particularly in international competitions, we are judged. And if we're seen to be doing well in sports and winning medals, then our country as a whole will be judged as being a strong, good country. And it also kind of reflects on our politics as well. So there's benefits to both mass participation and sporting excellence. Given also that in our current climate of obesity and sedentary population, the government's targets of having people do a minimum of 30 minutes 5 times a week, that's adults of course, and children doing an hour every day, unfortunately we're not really succeeding, and this relates to the adults in that only about 70% of our population are reasonably active doing this kind of level of activity, which obviously is below par and below what we'd hope for. So the advantages of mass participation, as we've sort of said, saving money in terms of the NHS and having a healthy, happy nation. But the initiatives that we need in place to make this happen are actually quite time-consuming and expensive. And actually that we seem to have lots of different initiatives that chop and change, and all of them cost money in terms of setting up and maintaining. Sporting excellence also has some advantages and disadvantages. Raising the profile of individual sports, athletes and our country in terms of the world stage is a great bonus. But perhaps this focuses too much on a few people at the top, and funding might go into these people and away from others that need it. Particularly certain sports may get more funding than others, and that might be sort of perceived as being unfair and unequal. So there's some bias perhaps there. Now, the sports development pyramid, you're going to need also in terms of your EPIP, your verbal assessment, where you'll have to describe participation opportunities and progression opportunities within your main EPIP sport. So this is just really an overview of the development pyramid. So here it is, and I've just gone in red colour those questions and organisations related to excellence, and in green those strategies and organisations more related to mass participation. And of course, in terms of where you are and how you move up this pyramid, you need to be aware of the funding that might be available or might be used to do so. Just really to start also with an example of a local young man who came to Basvik, actually, Jack Hoyle, who really illustrates the progression up this pyramid quite naturally, in that he went along to taste the session at the Take Part Festival, where he had a go at cycling, a free session, Preston Park, and he had a go at cycling and actually joined the club, loved what he was doing. He had natural talent, was supported, went to championships, did fantastically well, competed in the school sport games and raced at the Olympic velodrome and won medals, and is very much an Olympic hopeful for 2016. So here's a local real life example of somebody entering at sort of foundation participation level and going up to performance and excellence level. So what do these levels mean? The lower level is foundation level, and this is where somebody might be introduced into sport or a variety of sports, hopefully, and they'll learn the basic skills. This is also sort of termed grassroots level, but I think if the blue phrases here I've highlighted are possibly the better phrases to associate with this level and to use if you had a question on it. So we want from this to introduce people to sport, teach them basic skills, and give them a really positive attitude towards that activity or taking part. Now, I've used cycling based on Jack's example as my sort of ongoing example throughout this. So in terms of cycling, British Cycling have in place Go Ride, a strategy called Go Ride. And this involves lots of different ways in which they try to introduce people into cycling. So Bike for Life is actually a private company that try to encourage adults and children to ride. Obviously, Jack experienced a taster session at the Take Part Festival. Family is also very important in terms of being role models and introducing young people into activities. There are bike it officers who go into primary schools, Go Ride for school clubs, so trying to promote cycling perhaps a little bit more on the talent side there, to spot talent very early. We've got Bike Ability, which is a bit like cycle proficiency test. So all of these strategies or organisations are really trying to introduce people into cycling. So the second level of this pyramid is participation. This is still a mass participation end, and what we're doing now is trying to encourage participation. So we've introduced, and now we want people to choose to continue to participate regularly. And people will do activities at this level for fun and for recreational values. So choice, regularity or consistency, fun and recreation, and they're choosing to do this in their leisure time. If this might be your extracurricular club, or this might be a local leisure centre that you go along to regularly. Again, trying to link it to the cycling example, there's actually a British Cycling have a strategy to try to include women and make women participate much more in cycling, and that's called Breeze. But also, again, you can see there are sort of low-level clubs where there may be an element of competition, but it's very low level. There are loads of cycling routes, certainly around the city. There's the British Heart Foundation. They do a lot of fun 25 or 50 mile cycles, actually to raise money for British Heart Foundation, but to promote cycling. And things like the Cycle to Work scheme, which is a way of companies and organisations promoting cycling and commuting to work, and you get a little bit of money off buying a bike. The third level is performance. So here now we're going into sporting excellence, where involvement becomes much more structured and competitive. It's about winning. This might be your higher end club, district, county or regional level, where you need to improve and you're training to improve and you get high level coaching. So we've taken up a step in the intensity. And in terms of cycling, here are the examples. So they have Go Ride Racing, which is an entry-level cycling competition. Or you could represent, as Jack did, and compete at the school sport games. Or you can go to the school's regional racing. So all the better young people around the regions will compete against each other. So this is a more intense level. Finally, then we've got the excellence level, where we've got our international athletes, our elite performers, which is really only limited to a few people who are there because they're most able. The outcome is basically winning, and here you would particularly look to get, or might get, rewards, medals, prize money, status. And again, you might recognise these are elite cyclists who've done amazing things in getting gold medals for us. So again, talent team programme, people or young people who are likely to be medalists at some point for us are supported within this programme. There's a podium programme where you get funding. There are national championships. You potentially might represent the country at the Olympics or international championships. So there's lots available at that top end. So I would recommend looking at British Cycling, which is a national governing body of cycling, because they have incredible support both at the mass participation end and the elite end. Look at their whole sport plan. It's a good example of what should be in place to promote a sport. And again, you need to know your national governing body. You need to know the role of national governing bodies. You need to know how they can help mass participation in sport and excellence and help people at both ends of this continuum, of this pyramid. So here's just a summary of the cycling development pathway, where I've summarised all the factors at foundation, participation, performance and elite level. You need to know this for your EPIP sport. Here's just again a summary of the 4 levels of the pyramid. So again, you must use this language. It's really important we use this language. And finally, remember, you need to know those things in relation to your EPIP sport. So what is in place at foundation, what's in place to encourage participation, and how are you supported in terms of progressing up the development pyramid? What funding might be there for you? Where would you get your funding from?